Hello and welcome to Newsclick. The Congress-led UPA seems to have now got second thoughts on the civil liability for nuclear damage bill. This was scheduled to be tabled in the Lok Sabha on 15th March, but was deferred at the last moment. Whether this is only a tactical retreat, waiting for the budget to be passed before taking up such legislation, or is it a desire to dialogue with other parties on the bill remains to be seen. However, the high-voltage campaign unleashed in the media, with now the National Security Advisor Shiv Shankar Menon briefing Congress MPs, seems to indicate this is only a temporary retreat. For the Congress, it's an issue of how to create a positive spin on the bill. The critics have stated that the bill is designed to subsidize foreign suppliers using Indian taxpayers and also Indian people carrying all the risks. There are three sets of issues in the bill. One is a political one. Why is such a bill necessary now, considering that India has had operational nuclear reactors since the 1960s? The second are the provisions of compensation, the cap on total liability, the operator liability, and also the supplier's liability. The third set of issues are the legal ones. The bill takes away a number of common law rights and even violates certain constitutional provisions such as the right to move courts. The government's argument for the bill is that all suppliers, the Russians, the French, and now the Americans, have asked limiting their liability. This is not an exclusive measure for the US suppliers. What the government is hiding is that only US suppliers have made passing of a liability act as a precondition for nuclear supplies. The Russians have already supplied 2 reactors in Kudankulam without any such legislation. Similarly, the French have not linked the supply of Arriva reactors to India with passing of such an act. The US Ambassador Roemer made clear not only the US interest in the Nuclear Liability Bill, but also linked it explicitly to the India-US nuclear deal completion. Speaking to the journalists on 15th March, Roemer said that the Indo-US nuclear agreement is an important deal that the United States and India needs to be able to finish and complete. And a part of this completion is for the Parliament to pass this bill. The US industry, its spokesperson, and the US officials are on record on the need for such a bill before US companies can do business in India. The bill caps total liability in case of a nuclear accident to 300 million SDRs, or about Rs 2,100 crores. If we look at the Bhopal gas leak case, a similar amount was accepted by the Supreme Court as the total liability of Union Carbide. It's clear today that this was a grossly inadequate sum. A nuclear accident could be far more dangerous, and capping the total liability to a sum comparable to that of Bhopal is dangerous for the Indian people. Legal experts have pointed out that capping liability is violative of Indian law as settled in the Supreme Court judgment in the Oleum leak case. Even more problematic is capping the operator's liability to only Rs 500 crores. As the government is also advocating the entry of private players in nuclear power, this is well within the insurance cover of these companies. Such a low cap provides no strong incentive for observing plant safety. The UPA spokespersons have argued that most countries have caps and these caps are of a similar order.
The convention in Japan very clearly states that the liability is limited, as it is in the case of Canada, as it is in the case of Korea, as it is in the case of South Africa, and I can go on chapter and verse.
There is a deliberate attempt to confuse issues here. For example, Japan has a cap of $1.2 billion on the operator, but not the Japanese government. The Japanese government has unlimited liability, over and above $1.2 billion. Germany and Finland have no caps on operators' liability. The liability of the manufacturer is again virtually non-existent in the bill. Under normal legal provisions, a supplier is liable for defective supplies. Under the proposed bill, however, this provision would only apply if the defect is a result of gross negligence or a willful act. Otherwise, the operator would have to build this into their private contract with the suppliers. The government's spin on this is trying to make gross negligence and willful act the same as product defect.
It is absolutely incorrect to say that the bill indemnifies the operator, the supplier in any sense of the word. Look at 17B, clause 17B. It clearly says that if it has been established that the supplier is guilty, he would also be liable, but that would be inter se liability between the operator and the supplier, because if you dilute the strict and absolute principle of liability, you are going to run into a legal minefield and a legal thicket.
Even TV anchors have been confused on this.
I must admit that when I first heard about this bill, no compensation by the manufacturers, I was horrified. But when I read it a bit more closely, and I found that many other countries have this, that the manufacturers actually are liable if it's a manufacturing defect. If it's an operational defect, the operator pays. Then I began to find actually it has to be in there. There has to be there.
Contrary to what they are saying, under the proposed bill, the normal right of recourse of an operator for substandard or defective equipment is being extinguished in the bill. The government spokespersons have now started saying that India needs to join the Convention on Supplementary Compensation for Nuclear Damage, as this will provide India with higher compensation over and above the 300 million SDRs. The reality is that this US drafted convention is yet to take off and unlikely to actually be ratified in the future. Till date, it has been ratified by only 4 countries, including the US. The other 3 are Morocco, Argentina and Romania, who between them own only 4 reactors. No other major nuclear reactor owning country has ratified this even after 13 years of its existence. Major countries operating nuclear plants like Russia, France, Japan have not joined the convention. It is not enough for India to join the convention. The countries put together have to have 400,000 megawatt thermal capacity for the convention to become operational. There is a further legal issue in the bill. The bill makes the Claims Commission's verdict final. The Claims Commissioner's verdict cannot be challenged in any court of law in the country. The fundamental right of a citizen to file for an injunction or a writ petition in the courts have been abrogated in the bill. No other commission set up by the government has ever put in such bars.
When you bring a bill like this and limit the liability and completely rule out any liability of the foreign supplier of this equipment and even bar the jurisdiction of the Indian courts, then it becomes very pernicious and has to be opposed. I mean, suppose they supply a defective nuclear reactor and tomorrow a nuclear accident were to take place and they were let off completely off the hook. I mean, they'll have absolutely not a single naya paisa's responsibility. The bill is so pernicious that it rules out all the jurisdiction of the civil courts in India. No injunction can be issued by them, no application entertained by them. And why are they creating this? Only in order to help a couple of US companies.
The left parties had decided to oppose at the outset itself the introduction of this bill. We would urge the government of India to arrange for wide discussions and consultations on the provisions of this bill. And a bill, if it has to be brought, a legislation has to be brought, it has to be focused primarily and mainly and only on the interests of the Indian people, safeguarding their rights.
The battle lines are clear and the government will not have an easy time if they do not address the fundamental concerns raised by the opposition and the critics. Will the bill go through, or will it be another long drawn-out battle with an uncertain outcome? The coming days will bring out the future of the bill. This is a Newsclick presentation and we hope to come back to you with more details of the bill as it unfolds.